Hello everyone, Christina Warner here. Welcome to day 25 of the holiday card series for 2024. We are at the very end of this year's holiday card series, and I just want to wish you a very Merry Christmas, even if you don't stick around for the whole video. In today's video and card, I'm going to be using the Christmas Wreath 3D embossing folder from Lisa Horton, as well as the Christmas Wreath stencils. So I started out with some solar white cardstock from Neenah, and I put it inside the embossing folder. In order to just let this 3D embossing folder work a little bit better and to prevent cracking, I wiped a wet baby wipe over both sides of the cardstock. Sometimes that really does help the embossed texture kind of push into the paper, but without cracking. I ran it through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine from Spellbinders using the 3D embossing folder sandwich, and it wasn't tight enough. So instead I used my Griffin Empress, and I just had it replace one of the plates, and it worked perfectly. Such a beautiful embossed wreath. So here are the stencils. There are many stencils. I can't even remember how many. There might be like 8 or so. There's a lot of stencils. And as I started working with the stencils on top of the embossed design, I realized that you don't need all of the stencils when you're using on top of the embossing. So if you were using the stencils on their own without any other product, you would need all of the stencils in order to get like the lines on the leaves and the intricate veining on the poinsettias. You would need that so you have a complete design. But since I have the wreath embossed already, I don't need everything. I just need like the main outer areas, and then the details will come from the embossing. I started out with watermelon ink from Concord and Ninth, and I just brought that in on the outer edges of each one of these poinsettias. I kept the center very light, and as I add more color to this, it's just going to intensify that texture. So then I moved on to the color Poppy after I finished all of these watermelon poinsettias. And this is going to further intensify the outer area on the flower. I guess technically poinsettias aren't flowers. I think someone in a comment said that poinsettias that the flowers are the yellow centers and the red is actually the leaves. I thought that was interesting. I don't know if I'm completely repeating inaccurate information, but I thought that was interesting nonetheless. So I add that poppy all around the outer edge, and then to really intensify this, I grabbed a teeny tiny brush. This brush happens to be from Altenew, but I only had like one of these small brushes. So I'm going to use some other small brushes here in a little bit, and I'm going to use ones from Waffle Flower as well. So I'm using the color Nutmeg from Concord and Ninth, and just bringing in that brown really darkens up the red. One of the things that I've learned with all of my Copic coloring and things like that is that if you want to really intensify a red color, don't add a darker red or even purple, add brown. It works really well. So in the stencil set, there are 2 stencils for the leaves, the main leaf shapes. And they're basically like every other spot on the wreath itself. It's probably meant so that you could have different colors of leaves on your wreath, but I'm going to use the same colors for both of the stencils. And I'm going to do a basic kind of ink blend of Avocado. Then I'm going to grab a smaller brush and add Artichoke for some darker details, and then even more intensifying it with some Midnight. So the thing that's interesting about these stencils is that you'll notice over on the side that there are 6 holes. It almost looks like it would be in a binder or something like that. And I think I looked it up when I was ordering these products because I was unfamiliar with Lisa Horton's products outside of her metallic inks, which Jennifer McGuire raved about and really recommended. So I did buy those. But when I looked into her products, it looks like she has a whole system where you can put the stencils down on these pegs and it holds the stencil in place, and then you always have the stencil lined up perfectly. Now, I don't have that product to use, but I did find that pressing these the little tab with the 6 holes on it, pressing that down onto this grip mat from Waffle Flower held the stencil in place, and I didn't have it move around at all, even though it was very much so not adhered down all the way around. So I'm moving on to that second stencil that I mentioned for the leaves, doing that nice coating of avocado, coming in and intensifying the base of each leaf with some artichoke, using a very small brush, and then using a teeny tiny brush from Waffle Flower with midnight ink just to really get a dark spot on the leaves. And I noticed that it was a little bit easier to add the darkest shades with this brush in a flicking motion, just from the base of each leaf, just flicking that brush up into the shape. That worked really well for adding some intensity on these leaves. I'm going to lift off this stencil, and it is already looking so beautiful, but I'm going to add some Buttercup ink over the centers of the flowers, and then I'll lift that up, and then you notice that well, maybe you can't see it on camera, but there are some additional spots for some little buds. So I'm using pink lemonade ink, and I'm adding those on, going all the way around. Just ink blending that on, having more intense color right at the base. And then I'm taking Honeysuckle, and I'm going to add more of that color at the base of each one of these buds. Now, what's interesting is that there is another stencil that adds on these little caps on top of these buds. And it's actually paired with the details on the poinsettia leaves, or the main areas of the poinsettia. So I'm actually going to put that stencil down onto my project. I will completely ignore the center areas of the poinsettias, and I'm just going to add ink onto those little areas that are on top of these buds, and also the little stems. There are a few spots where it's a stem that connects to the buds, so I'll add those on as well. And just adding these pops of pink really brings in a little bit of a lightness and brightness onto this pretty dramatic and intense wreath. And I think it looks really pretty. But of course, if you were doing this without the embossed design, if you don't like those buds, you could just not ink blend that and that would work. I'm using a little bit of white gouache, and I'm going to just fix a couple of these areas that kind of went rogue a little bit, where the ink kind of slipped underneath the stencil. So I'll just add that in. It was mostly on the same spot on these leaves. There was just a tight spot around these leaves, and using this white gouache worked out well. You could also use a white gel pen, but because I had used Concord and 9th inks, which do reactivate with moisture, I just know from past experience that sometimes a jelly roll pen will reactivate that ink below, and then it doesn't look white. It just looks like a pale version of whatever color you were covering up. I then cut off a little bit off the side of my design here, and that's so that it would be an exact A2 sized card. I'm testing out Juniper to see if that really is the color I want, and it was. And I'm going to bring some Juniper ink around the outside edge of my card design. Just bringing that in and intensifying that color on the edges. Now, ink blending onto the paper on top of this grip mat, it was really kind of hard. It was pulling on the brush. So eventually I decided to peel it up from my grip mat and just go onto a piece of paper. And this really allowed me to ink blend a little bit more freely, and it wasn't catching on that grip mat. So I added some midnight ink right around the outer edges. It just looks so pretty and dramatic, adding in that blue on that outer edge. I think it just really finishes off this entire wreath. I'm using the Cool Yule stamp set from Hutson for my greeting today. I thought it'd be really fun to have one of these smaller greetings like right in the center, and then have the beginning and ending words that are in this script above and below. So I'm using the phrase Holly Jolly, and I'm going to be stamping it in a black ink, just a VersaFine Onyx black ink. I thought, I could emboss this with some gold embossing powder or something, but I decided to keep it simple and very kind of just stark, and wanted a really nice, clean stamped image. So I stamped the Holly Jolly first, and then I'm actually going to go back and stamp the beginning and ending of this phrase. So I'm going to remove that stamp from the door of my Misty and then place these other stamps above and below. So it says, "Have a holly jolly Christmas." I think it's so great that you can mix and match these greetings and make your own greeting with these different fonts. Okay, so I've got my greeting on there. My card is almost done, but I decided I wanted to add a little bit more texture, a little bit of shine. It is a Christmas card. I can never resist adding shine to a Christmas card. So I thought I would do some gold paint splatter. I'm using some mint tape or post-it tape to cover up my greeting. And then I'm using the color Star from Yule watercolors. It is my most favorite color out of all of Jeannie's colors that she's come up with. I use it the most often, and it's just this beautiful gold shade. It's not super, super yellow or brassy. It's just a beautiful shade. I love it so much. So I splattered that on off the edge of an acrylic block, and then I peeled up that mint tape, and I decided to add just a few little spots of this gold ink, or gold paint, I should say, up next to my greeting. I just used a paintbrush for that. I wanted a little bit more control of where the splatter would be around that greeting. I also dabbed on some little dots in the centers of the flowers. I think that added a nice little touch onto the flowers. When it comes to adhering this to my card front, I actually used some ultra sticky wide tape from Altenew and pretty much coated the entire front of my card. And that's because my card design today has that embossed texture on it. And I wanted to make sure that I had enough adhesive all over the card so that wherever the flat surface of the design would be touching the card base, it would be adhered down very securely. So this is the very last card for the card series for this year. It's all finished. I love this one. It's such a dramatic look, and I really want to make probably about 5 or 6 more of these and just save them for next year since it's much too late to get them into the mail for this year. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've been watching every single day of the holiday card series, thank you so, so much. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break between, Christmas and New Year's, and I will be back after the New Year. So thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel and my line with Concord and Ninth. You guys are the absolute best. Thank you so much, and I will catch you very soon. Thanks for watching.